Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. David French of National Review is in for Jim Garrity today. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives. Also sponsored today by ZipRecruiter. Right now, Three Martini Lunch listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter.com for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free trial. And David, let's start with the good martini. Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, had kind of telegraphed this in recent days. But the Trump administration, through the Justice Department, has officially rescinded the Obama administration directive that came out last year that would have required all public schools to allow students, faculty, and pretty much anyone on the facilities to use the restroom, locker room, whatever that corresponded with their gender identity rather than their biological sex. This had been stopped and frozen in court as a result of states appealing this. Trump, during the campaign last year, had said initially that he was okay with it and then later said he thought it should be left up to the states. That's the same message that Sean Spicer is using. Jeff Sessions, one of his first major acts as Attorney General, in a move that I think a lot of social conservatives ought to like here, David.
Yes, this is restoring sanity and the rule of law. I mean, let's first talk about the rule of law. The Obama administration action essentially amended Title IX, which is a statute. It amended Title IX by changing the definition of sex to include gender identity. In other words, a person's idea of what they want to be versus the biological reality of what they are. And then what was so radical about this is it didn't just deal with bathrooms. That's how the media is portraying this. It's about who gets to go to the bathrooms that they want to go to. It dealt with the full spectrum of school life. So yes, bathrooms. Yes, showers. So it meant that girls could end up showering next to anatomically intact males. It dealt with overnight sleeping arrangements so that on field trips, girls would be sleeping in the same room as guys. It would deal with curriculum. It dealt with pronoun usage. In other words, it opened this Pandora's box that if a student is a he and says that he's a she and his classmates still call him a he, is he now subject to able to file some sort of hostile environment discrimination claim if the school doesn't clamp down on other students? Does this mean that biology textbooks had to be changed if they indicate that there's something unless they indicated that sex and gender are two distinct things? So this was an unbelievably radical initiative from the Obama administration. They didn't bother to pass it through the lawmaking process or the rulemaking process. They just wrote a letter. So for the Trump administration to repeal this letter, it's restoring a little bit of sanity here.
Let me get your reaction to a couple different aspects here. For the most part, certainly the Trump administration, but even a lot of other people on the right have opposed this based on the states' rights issue rather than some of the more cultural conservative arguments that we've certainly heard over time. Do you see that being a significant shift, not just on this issue, but in general on some of these cultural issues for the right, or is this more of a unique instance in this case?
Well, I think that sort of leaving it to the states is kind of a way for people who are social conservatives and more libertarian conservatives to meet in the middle on some of these issues. You're going to have an awful lot of members of the GOP tent who, quite frankly, don't care about this issue at all. But they do care about federalism. They do care about the rule of law. And then you have others, such like me on the social conservative side. I care about this issue on the merits, and I care about it from a federalism basis. So I think when you're talking about leaving it to the states, it's a method that genuinely and legitimately bridges some gaps within the conservative movement. Not everyone agrees on the merits of these issues and how schools should apply these, or how schools should deal with transgender students. So why not leave it to the schools and the communities rather than trying to impose a one-size-fits-all solution?
And last question on this topic, there were reports that there was some friction in the Trump administration over this because since both the Justice Department and Department of Education had been in on this letter during the Obama years, that was necessary for both departments to come together to rescind it. And while Jeff Sessions was in favor of it, the reports are that Betsy DeVos at Education was not. Ultimately, the president sided with Sessions, and DeVos reluctantly went along. To what extent does that surprise you about Betsy DeVos?
Well, I hope the reporting's not true. I mean, Sean Spicer is denying it. it's tough to know what is true or what's not true anymore with all these anonymously reported stories. If the reporting is true and Betsy DeVos was opposed to rescinding the Obama administration letter, that's troubling because this is only the first of many letters that need to be rescinded from the Obama administration, all of them on really hot button cultural issues. Like, for example, the Obama administration's Dear Colleague letters regarding sexual assault on campus that essentially mandated that these colleges set up kangaroo courts all over the country to try sex assault claims under a very low burden of proof, preponderance of the evidence, and without any real guarantees of due process, which has led to chaos across the country and more than 100 lawsuits against colleges for violating constitutional rights of male students. So she's got to step in and do something there. And that's, if she thinks this issue is contentious, wait until she wades into that one. So, it's a little bit troubling. I want to see her approach these issues from a standpoint of respecting the rule of law, respecting constitutional process, and having the courage of her convictions to resist the far left backlash.
So as David mentioned a moment ago, whether you agree with the decision on the merits or you're just happy to see some people in Washington thinking that they're not in charge of every blessed decision that comes down at the local level or should come down at the local level, you can be pleased with that as well. Okay, on to the bad Martini now. And David, it was, I guess, almost 9 years ago now that the Heller decision came down that once again confirmed that, yes, individuals in America have the right to own firearms, which is what the Second Amendment says. But now, as your colleague Charles Cook at National Review points out, as have others, the courts are once again looking to potentially gut that. This is what Charlie writes at nationalreview.com. Freed up by the Supreme Court's ongoing reluctance to engage in depth with the Second Amendment, the Fourth Circuit has taken upon itself to rewrite Heller en banc. In a 10-4 decision issued yesterday afternoon, the court upheld Maryland's ban on both assault weapons, quote-unquote, and high-capacity magazines, quote-unquote. By doing so, it deprived the people of Maryland, the Carolinas, and the Virginias of the core protections to which the Constitution entitles them. As Judge Traxler's dissent pointedly establishes, the majority achieved this transformation by contriving a heretofore unknown test, which is whether the firearm in question is most useful in military service. In effect, this test is designed to permit judges to determine that any weapon they might dislike is unprotected by the Second Amendment and can therefore be prohibited with impunity. Forget that Heller contains its own explicit tests. Forget the common use standard. Forget dangerous and unusual. There's a new kid in town, and he's coming for your rifles. David, as most folks know, you are a lawyer. When you look at a decision like this, how threatening is it?
Yeah, this isn't just a bad martini. It's like a grotesque martini that will give you food poisoning. This is a terrible decision. Let's be really, really clear about what the Fourth Circuit Court said. It said the Second Amendment does not protect the right to own what it calls an assault weapon, and it does not protect the right to own what it calls a high-capacity magazine. To be clear, that's a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. Well, that covers an enormous amount of handguns that people carry, carry under their lawful concealed carry permits. It covers about, one estimate is around 75 million magazines in the United States. And they said you have zero constitutional right to it. Why? Because they invented this standard that said, well, the Second Amendment doesn't protect something that's most useful for military service. What does that even mean? It's clear they don't even know. They basically said this was something, look, I served in the military. I have an AR-15 in the home. I know the difference between a military weapon and a civilian weapon. And they actually wrote that a semi-automatic weapon like the AR-15 is essentially indistinguishable from a fully automatic weapon because you could fire at a rate of fire with a semi-automatic weapon of 300 to 500 rounds per minute. I literally, figuratively spit out my coffee at that one because I care about my computer keyboard. And it was unbelievable, the amount of willful ignorance. So they're actually believing that a semi-automatic weapon is functionally indistinguishable from a fully automatic weapon. That kind of thinking, that kind of ignorance is what gives you such bad law in the Second Amendment. So, I hope this will be appealed to the Supreme Court. The problem is the Supreme Court's not been willing to look hard at these Second Amendment issues in recent years, and so it's entirely possible that the Supreme Court will just let this lie, and that means people who live in states like Maryland and Virginia, North Carolina, will not have a constitutional right to own weapons that a court just judges on its own based on an enormous amount of ignorance about firearms is somehow most useful for military service. And to really boil this down, there's very few weapons that would be free from that analysis. I mean, when I was in Iraq, I carried an M4, which they say is exactly like an AR-15. Wrong. I carried a Beretta 9mm handgun, which is pretty much exactly like the Ruger SR9 handgun I carry now. Heck, I mean, people still use pump-action shotguns. They were used in generations in the military. Does that mean they're most useful for military service? I mean, what guns are immune? Snipers have often used bolt-action rifles. I mean, here's the reality. Guns have been pioneered, innovated, advanced, often and maybe even primarily through military service. Guns are dangerous. So the question of whether they are useful for military service is to say, well, is this gun dangerous? And of course there are. I mean, they're designed to be dangerous. But this was, they invented a new standard. They stripped constitutional rights of the citizens in their jurisdiction. And I don't have confidence the Supreme Court will reverse it. I mean, that's why I say it's a grotesque, dirty, nasty martini that's already giving me food poisoning.
Ugh. It would be nice to replace these judges, but unfortunately they're appointed for life until they retire or pass away. But so the American people aren't necessarily hiring for the Fourth Circuit right now. But the question is, are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? Because posting your job in one place is not enough to find quality candidates. If you want to find the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all the top job sites. And now you can.
With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to 100-plus job sites, including social media networks like Facebook and Twitter, all with a single click. Find candidates in any city or industry nationwide. Just post once and watch your qualified candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. No juggling emails or calls to your office. Quickly screen candidates, rate them, and hire the right person fast.
So find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 1 million businesses. And right now, 3 Martini Lunch listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/free trial. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free trial. One more time, to try it for free, go to ZipRecruiter.com/free trial. And David, some people think that perhaps the Sacramento Kings should be posting their GM position as a result of a recent trade that they made, which involved DeMarcus Cousins, their most marquee player. This is our Crazy Martini now. I actually suggested to David a sports topic for the Crazy Martini, which was Major League Baseball deciding that you don't actually have to throw the pitches anymore to intentionally walk someone, which is crazy. Not as crazy as the rule that they're testing in the lower minors this year about if you're tied going in and you have to have extra innings, that the team at bat automatically gets a guy on second to start the innings. So the insanity in sports is not just related to politics and other weird things. It's actually affecting what's going on the field and on the court now, too. But when it comes to DeMarcus Cousins, this trade was announced actually right around the time the All-Star game ended on Sunday. This is from Business Insider. The Sacramento Kings' stunning decision to trade DeMarcus Cousins to the New Orleans Pelicans left many around the NBA believing the Kings got fleeced. How could the Kings trade a 26-year-old all-NBA center for stopgap role players in Tyreek Evans and Langston Galloway, a 23-year-old rookie in Buddy Hield, a 2017 first-round draft pick that may fall outside the lottery, and a second-round pick? While there are a lot of pieces, none of them represent the haul that other teams like the Denver Nuggets and Orlando Magic got for trading superstars Carmelo Anthony and Dwight Howard, respectively. The story goes on to say that ultimately the Kings were looking to save a little money because Cousins is up for a major contract in 2018 that was looking to be worth about $209 million. And given some of the dysfunction that he's been part of in the organization, they weren't sure that was worth it. and they think he's probably going to make about $180 million signing somewhere else. And Cousins has made it known that if he was to be traded, he would never sign with the team he was traded to. So, David, this is a little bit personal for you because you're a big Kentucky Wildcats fan, and DeMarcus Cousins was part of John Calipari's vaunted one-and-done system in the 2009-2010 season. What do you make of all this?
If you're not an NBA fan, you can't really understand and comprehend the level of heist here. This is amazing. This is the top statistical center in the NBA being traded for a bunch of guys that, well, some of them may end up being good, some of them may not end up being good, and then not only being traded, but being placed with the other top statistical big man in the NBA to create this enormous 1-2 punch that, frankly, I've never in my life intentionally tuned in for a New Orleans Pelicans game. I'm going to watch them religiously now. I have NBA season pass, so I can see any NBA game at any time. I'm going to become a Pelicans fan because I love Boogie Cousins. I love Anthony Davis, two Kentucky alums. Yep. I grew up about 15 miles from Rupp Arena, the center of the basketball universe in Lexington, Kentucky. And this is just crazy. I mean, and to understand the sort of the full magnitude of it, this trade is coming from a team, the Sacramento Kings, that may be setting records for haplessness and insanity in professional sports. They have an owner who actually suggested as a serious matter that they play 5-on-4 on defense with only 4 players on defense and one just standing underneath the goal on the other side. They have traded lottery picks for virtually nothing. They have drafted, in some cases, even though they had one of the best centers in the NBA, they keep drafting more and more centers. It's lunacy. And then the general manager, after the trade was done, basically went to the press and said, yeah, I turned down better deals. And it's amazing. Now, some people believe that was sort of subtweeting his owner to say, my owner wouldn't let me make a better deal until this deal. But it really is remarkable. So on the one hand, the great part of it is we get to see maybe one of the all-time greatest front court combos in basketball history between Davis and Cousins. And then the other thing is if you're the kind of person who slows down and rubbernecks at car accidents, you're going to be slowing down and rubbernecking at those poor Sacramento Kings. I feel so sorry for their fan base.
Yeah, that's been a rough stretch for the Sacramento Kings. They haven't. They had one good stretch there back in the early 2000s when they darn near made it to the NBA Finals, but the Lakers got them in a 7-game series. And then once they lost Chris Webber and Mike Bibby and Peja Stojakovic, it just haven't been the same. And as you point out, bad front office decisions pile up one after the other. That can definitely be a factor in how your whole franchise unfolds over time. Look at the Cleveland Browns. David?
No, Tom, look at the Cleveland Browns. If Hugh Hewitt listens to this podcast, he just let out an existential scream.
Oh, Jim loves to reference that whenever we make fun of Cleveland, because when the Republican convention was announced for 2016, I said, why would they pick Cleveland? Nothing ever wins when it comes out of Cleveland. But, of course, the Cavaliers broke that streak last year. And so did Donald Trump.
Exactly.
So big year in 2016 for Cleveland. David, always great to have you with us. And the great news is we get to do it again tomorrow.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
David French of National Review is in for Jim Garrity today. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And remember that 3 Martini Lunch listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/free trial, ZipRecruiter.com/free trial. Join us again on Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.